First of all, I would like to say very welcome to Serbia. And what brings you to Belgrade?
I'm really honored and excited. The U.S. Embassy reached out to me. They saw one of my films, which was on Disney Plus, called The Flag Makers, which is about the largest American flag and flagpole factory in the USA. And one of the main characters is Serbian, and tells her story. So they invited me over, and it's been this incredible series of days of visiting many cities, eating amazing food, and then just being warmly welcomed by the people.
Yes, and let's focus on your latest film, The Flag Makers. And what is the main goal of your documentary?
The main goal of my documentary is to invite people to think about their sense of belonging and their sense of identity in whatever country they live in. In this case, it's an American flag factory, and what's interesting about this factory is that most of the flag makers are immigrants and refugees from around the world. And across the globe, there's been this rising tide of white nationalism, of racism, of anti-immigrant sentiment, and yet immigrants make countries better, make communities better, so I wanted to tell a story that showed that.
Yeah, and your documentary shows how people from different backgrounds can work together and find the common ground. Can this apply to the world someday and to this unity?
Yes, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to make the film at this factory is that there are dozens and dozens of languages being spoken on the factory floor, and there are people from all over the world working, creating one single object at a time with their hands. And to me, that is such a beautiful representation of what a democracy could look like. It's the ideal democracy because people are working together through their differences, learning about each other. So that it's almost sort of this perfect microcosm of what we hope a democracy could be.
Yeah, and the main narrator of your film is Radisa Marquis. She comes from Serbia. And what impressed you the most about Radisa? What have you learned from her in this film?
One of the reasons Radisa became the main narrator of the documentary is that she speaks like a poet. She really does. She has this very poetic language. So at one point in the film, we really don't shy away from the problems in the United States. We really address issues of anti-immigrant sentiment, of racism. And she visits the Statue of Liberty and she says, you don't love something because it's perfect, you love something because it's yours. And that has really stuck with me, that wherever you live, even if you have problems with your community, with your country, you hope that you can, together with your fellow countrymen, move to a better and stronger place.
Yes. And one of the producers of the film is famous basketball player Giannis Antes. And could you tell us something about your collaboration?
Yes, so Giannis is a Greek immigrant and moved to the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area with his family. So in a way, he's a perfect executive producer for this film. This film started as an independent film, and then eventually National Geographic, which is owned by Disney, acquired it and helped us finish it. And Giannis at the time had a series about his life and his life as an immigrant coming to America on Disney Plus. So it was kind of the perfect marriage of somebody from very high caliber who believes in the immigrant story and in a sense of being able to come and start over in a new country. And so he is an executive producer of the film.
Yes, and you are one of the leading directors for documentaries. And why do you direct just documentaries? Is there a special bond between you and documentaries?
Yes. It's funny, sometimes people ask me, when are you going to direct a real film? And I think, like, documentaries are real films. They're real films. And in some ways, I think they're much harder to make because you don't know where the story is going. You commit to a story, and then in the case of Flag Makers, it was 3 years. And it's like you're Alice in Wonderland. You jump down a rabbit hole, and you don't know where that rabbit hole is going to lead you. But that unknown is actually, I think, a lot more exciting. And if you can do a documentary right, I actually think it can have a greater impact in terms of people thinking about issues in a different way, opening up hearts and minds to different issues.
Yes. Which famous person fascinates you the most?
Just in terms of anybody I've worked with?
Yes, yes. Or just the person who worked with you?
Well, as a woman director in Hollywood, I'm always tracking other women directors, like Catherine Bigelow. I'm always tracking other women directors because what I really want to see, what I just long to see, are women who are like me but maybe 20 years older. I notice that when I mentor younger women, they're very hungry to connect with me and to learn from me, and I see myself in that when I'm looking at other directors like that. So Jane Campion and Catherine Bigelow, and some of the women that are now making huge Hollywood films, that's an enormous accomplishment because it is still very much a male-dominated industry in Hollywood.
Yes, and where do you find ideas for your films?
Sometimes I dream about subjects and the images won't leave me alone, and I think maybe there's a film here. Sometimes I read an article and I think, oh, maybe this would make an interesting film. In the case of this flag factory film, The Flag Makers, my co-director Sharon Leese and I, we were really talking about how uncomfortable we felt with the American flag because we felt like it had been taken by this very conservative white right-wing group, and when they put it out on their houses or they put it in the back of their big pickup trucks, they were saying something that we didn't believe in. It was very anti-immigrant. It was very sort of white, very Trumpian, very, you know, stand with us or you're not patriotic. And I thought, you can question, you can grieve, you can hope and still be patriotic. So that is it. That film came from a question. So sometimes it's reading an article, sometimes it's just having a question.
Do you have some ideas to direct some documentaries about Serbia or Serbians? You did it with Radisa and...
I have loved being here and I have loved visiting. We've gone to several different cities now. Obviously, this is an incredibly rich cultural area with amazing, just amazing stories. Interestingly, I used to teach on the graduate level cinematography in New York, and one of my favorite graduate students is Serbian. Yeah. And she is now making her own documentaries and going back and forth from the States to Serbia, and every time I see her new film on social media, I'm so proud of her. She was an amazing student of mine. So obviously there are real amazing stories here, and I would love to do more collaboration and exploration here.
Yes, you mentioned the real films and just like action movies, comedies, etc. They're performing well at box office. Will documentaries have their place in cinema like these real movies?
Yeah, I mean, we are, I think, living in the golden age of documentary filmmaking. You know, when I first started out, it was starting to be, there was MTV, there was the History Channel. I was a cinematographer for all of those early years, so I was the camera person. I, you know, filmed for A&E, some of the cable channels, and then as Netflix grew, and now Apple has, you know, its own platform, and Disney Plus has its own platform. There are so many now opportunities for documentary filmmakers, and it's much more mainstream. It was actually one of the reasons I was really excited for Giannis to be one of our executive producers, because people that are interested in basketball might not be interested in a documentary about a flag factory. But when he talked about it, then other people, unexpected audiences, found the film. And that was exciting to me. So it's definitely becoming more mainstream.
Yes, you won Oscar in 2008.
I won the Oscar for a short documentary, Freeheld, in 2008. I was nominated again in 2013 for another documentary, Mondays at Racine.
Yes. Yeah. What is the recipe for gaining the Oscar?
I don't know what the recipe is. This film, The Flag Makers, was actually shortlisted for an Oscar this year, but it didn't make it. So I've been shortlisted 4 times. I've been nominated twice. I've won once. There's no guarantee. It's fickle. And I think that the lesson for me is always, you don't make a film looking for the awards. You really make a film to open hearts and minds around it. You make the best film you can make about an issue, about a story, and then wherever it goes, it goes. And every film is different. It has a different path.
Yes. Like, what are your further plans? Do you stand to direct documentaries, or you're planning to direct or some film that are regular, like?
I just finished a 4-part Netflix series about professional mermaiding, professional mermaids, which is a whole career. It's a $500 million industry globally, around the world. That was a 4-part series that I directed. I was the showrunner, and I was an executive producer. That was a really huge job, and one of the things that was exciting to me was that we were sometimes shooting fictional sort of fantasy sequences, and then we were filming real-life documentary series. So it was a combination, it was a hybrid of fiction and documentary. And that's a very exciting place for me. So 100%, I want to move into fiction filmmaking more formally, but I would love to keep some documentary elements. Maybe it's the cinematography, maybe it's a little more handheld, maybe it's a little more intimate. I have done 2 fiction projects. One was the adaptation as a producer of my Oscar-winning short documentary Freeheld. That was a feature film that was released in 2015, starring Elliot Page and Julianne Moore and Steve Carell and Michael Shannon, and it was released by Lionsgate. And I was one of the lead producers on that, so I started to learn about fiction filmmaking. And then just before the pandemic, I made a 26-minute fiction film just to send to festivals to sort of prove out that I could do fiction. So now I'm really ready for the next step, because I'm finding increasingly with my documentaries, I'm shooting them more fiction-like with proactive shots and thinking about framing and using different lenses the way that you would in a fiction film.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much.